On to data access, so it's obviously a pretty big topic at the moment. Lots of activity in Europe has been discussed earlier. The team at BLG have been working on it pretty hard over the last year in particular. It started off with the NZ Farm Data Code of Practice that Andrew talked about yesterday. We were working through that in terms of the implications for the SIL systems and the other infrastructure at BLG. And then that was followed on with the work that's been going on around the lab strategy, as many of you will have seen from the memo that Graham sent out last year, and we'll have a look at that in a second. And then finally with nProve, as we've been working through looking at the current SIL system in terms of what access we have in there and what we should be making available in nProve. So in terms of sort of breaking this into some logical order, we'll kick off by looking at the lab strategy, the work that's been going on there in conjunction with the consultation with the labs. Then we'll have a look at your access to data, your access to your own data and what we've been doing on that. And then finally we'll wrap up by looking at what obligations we have to the rest of industry, I guess primarily thinking of commercial farmers and some of the discussion on the couches yesterday. So we'll kick off with the lab policy. Have your clickers handy. There will be plenty of opportunities to provide feedback that we're keen to hear. So historically, the lab policy or the lab strategy has been an exclusive one where you would submit to a lab and then they would have the right to submit those genotypes in so they could be used as part of the NZGE evaluation. I mean, that's worked well in regards to being able to get good quality genotypes into the system and support a lot of what we've been able to do. But there has been growing feedback around a desire for additional choice, more transparency around those arrangements, and also, as came up yesterday, some clarity around ownership. So to that end, BLG's been working to move from that exclusive licensing arrangement to one that's, I guess, more lab agnostic, or one where you've got a choice in terms of labs that you'd like to use. And we've been working through the implications or the obligations on us at BLG of a change like that. Without dragging you through the weeds and lapsing you all into unconsciousness on the nitty-gritty details, we just have hopefully a reasonably straightforward example to take you through, just to sort of give a bit of an insight in terms of what that looks like. So if we start that with you as the breeder, you've got some animals and you've chosen to do some genotyping, you'd take some samples and you would send those to a lab. And assuming there's more than one lab to pick from, we need to have a set of international standards and apply those consistently in terms of the quality of processing we'd expect from the lab. We're just going to focus on the BLG pipeline here. So from there, focusing on the data that's flowing through to us, which is the genotype data. We want to make sure that that's in a format that's going to work for us and the rest of industry. And then we also need somewhere to stick that, so we need a genotype database, which we've been building. If we just sort of park that there, and let's say that was year one, and oh, sorry, my apologies. And then from there, we need to be able to chew on that data, feed it into the evaluation, like the NZGE evaluation, making sure that the required size are there to get the right results and the right content is on the genotype data that's coming in. And then we also need to be able to use that data for parentage purposes as well, to verify or assign pedigree. And then, as we covered yesterday, the tool that we want to use to put all of that in your hands is nProve. There's obviously a lot of genotype data that's sitting in this database, so we want to be able to put that in your hands through the nProve pipeline as well. So if we now treat that as sort of being year one, I'll just grey that out, and now we'll look at year two, so some more progeny, more genotyping to be done, samples to be sent, but now you've decided to send those to another lab. So we want to make sure that those same lab standards are in effect. Same again, we want to make sure that we're getting the genotype data flowing through and that we're able to hold that in the genotype database. When it comes time to check, say, parentage on the progeny from that second year, we want to make sure that we're not caught in this situation where it's apples and oranges trying to be compared. It's really, really important that there is some collaboration or coordination between the labs so that it is, that the content that's in the genotype data is actually comparable across labs. So the next obligation there is one of ensuring some level of compatibility. Like I said before, we want to make sure that the chip content's going to work for being able to produce NZGE results or helping to inform those. And then also making sure that if there's genotype data in there that you own, that you've got access to that, and also the ability to control who else you want to have access to that. The last point I'll pop on there, it doesn't really line up with any one of these individual points, but it is important to pop on there, which is about innovation, in that we need some standards around how all this is to work together. But at the same time, keep in mind that it was real choice or a desire for more choice between genotyping services that drove this. So, we need to leave the labs the opportunity or that flexibility to actually provide you different services. So, hopefully that's sort of as compressed down as we can sort of get it, quick overview of what that looks like. The key points on the BLG side that we've been working on. In a second, we're going to ask you, for your feedback in terms of this strategy in general, whether you're supportive or not, or it's not applicable to you. But before we do that, just a quick question with the clickers. In terms of this explanation, in terms of how we've gone about communicating what's going on, does this make sense, or are we giving everyone a bit of a headache? So if you could give us some feedback, one, if the explanation is pretty clear, two, if it's okay, three, if it's not clear, and if genotyping is just not of interest to you, don't be afraid to use option 4 to signal that as well. Thanks everyone, we'll give it another couple of seconds. Okay, cool. I'll pop that up on screen. Okay, cool. Thank you. So then, moving forward, so we've covered off what the obligations are. So then, what we're doing in terms of pulling it all together. I'll find my notes here. So the guiding principles, I guess, that's driving all of this is transparency, clarity of ownership. We'll talk about that a little more in a second. That portability. And there's also an industry good component to this as well, in that the genotypes that are going into that database, we want to make sure that they're able to be used for research projects. In terms of the parties involved, the animal and genotype owners need to be at the table for that, along with the labs, bureaus, and obviously BLG as well. In terms of another key guiding principle that ties into the ownership, and I think this was outlined pretty well in the letter that Graham sent out last year, but basically the thing that's driving most of how we're trying to align this is whoever pays owns. We're still working through the logistics of that in terms of exactly how that can work in the databases, but that's aspirationally what we're driving towards. Another question now, just before I open the polling. So this is hearing what we're doing and why and how we're going about it. Do you agree with the path that we're on? Or you no opinion, disagree, or again, if the whole genomics question is of no interest, go ahead and use option 4. So polling's just open now. Okay, I'll give that another couple of seconds. All right. Okay, thank you. All right, so moving on from there to look at your data access. I won't spend a whole lot of time on this because I think we pretty much covered it hopefully yesterday, but in terms of the resource that we're talking about, it's pretty incredible. Large numbers of information, all the pedigree information in there. Also through the genotypes, all the linkages we can see, along the lines of the impressive industry metrics that were discussed on Friday night, all the different areas of focus in terms of the traits and the ground that are being made. So, from our point of view, it's sort of like when you look at that, how can we bundle all of that and make it as accessible as we can? And as you hopefully saw yesterday, we're working hard in terms of what we deliver to you through nProve as putting that directly into your hands. In terms of the types of information, it's for your flocks, it's all your animal information, indexes, sub-indexes, breeding values, but also we're keen to make sure you've got access to the raw recorded trait information as well if you need to check any of that. I don't want to spend too much time on that today. Hopefully we covered it fairly well yesterday, so if it's okay, I'll move on and ask for your feedback when you're ready in terms of how we're going about empowering you with better access to your information, if we're on the right path, not sure, wrong path, or again, if you're simply not interested in getting your hands on this directly, please just use option number 4. Okay, give that a couple more seconds. All right, I'll close that off. Okay, cool, thank you. And then the last one, which is around industry data access. So we've got Sharon and Cheryl Ann. I think they've got a microphone so they can help out if more detail is needed in here. But what we're talking about here is, what information do we need to provide the rest of industry? The classic example typical example would be to commercial farmers, but that does include the information that you're giving to each other as well. And then in terms of that driving philosophy of who pays owns, keep that in mind here, in that the majority of the funding that drives this comes from all levy payers as well. So in terms of BLG's purpose, same one that was up on the slide yesterday, it's really around providing that information infrastructure. This is the best graphic that I could find that sort of describes how it looks a little bit at times to me, where it does look like we're all heading in a pretty similar direction, but at times the lines do cross and there is a bit of friction. But for us at BLG, it's really sort of finding that middle path where we can bring as many people with us as we can. And the key things that we're looking at is how do we best empower you to achieve genetic gain as efficiently as you can? How do we empower industry in terms of the selection of the genetics, like was talked about at the top? All the while, we need to keep an eye and maintain the integrity of the evaluation and our sector capability as well. So in a minute, I'm going to pop up on screen the information that's currently available through the Finder tools. But I just wanted to take a quick second to point out that, as you'll see, these tools are really, really powerful. But as many people have approached me and reminded me of at the session in the last couple of days and at the Sheep Breeder Forum last year, they are not easy to use. And so, although there's a lot of information available, as you'll see, the reality is that in a way it's locked behind something that's a bit of an impediment to it being used. So I just want to raise the point that through nProve, we are going to be replacing those. We are intending to replace them with something that is easy to use. So as we look at this information that we're making available to industry, let's assume that it will be something that's going to be accessible and not the status quo. So through those tools at the moment, you can get flock and breeder contact information. There's animal IDs are in there. Some basic animal information is available. The gold trait BVs are in there. The official indexes and sub-indexes in there. There's high-level connectedness information, and there's also those percentile ranking graphs are available in there as well. So that's, through those Finder tools, that's the information that's available. And just to press the point too that the animal information is all animals, not just rams. So that brings us to the next question, which is, in looking at that list of information that's available to industry, and assuming that we can make it easier for people, more usable, how do you feel? Do you think that we should be sharing more than that? Do you think it's about right, or sharing less? So 1, I think we should be sharing more. 2, if it's about right, and 3, if you'd like us to be sharing less. Okay, just give it a couple more seconds. Okay, I'll pop that up. Okay, cool. Okay, so then, where are we? So in terms of if there was nervousness for those that thought we should be sharing less, and this one will be multi-choice, okay, so you don't have to pick one. If there's any there that we should be considering taking off the table, just go ahead and hit the numbers beside any of them. And with regards to that comment about it being all animals, we've added option 8 there around use if anyone feels that they shouldn't be available. Yep.
Do we have to vote?
Yes, sorry, great point, William. No, you don't have to. Only if you feel like some of those should be pulled off, then go ahead and click. Okay, I'll close that off in a couple of seconds. Okay, I'll pop that up. So it looks like, I know that's terribly small print and I can barely read it from here, but percentile bands got the most with 6, use 5, then connectedness at 3, and then animal IDs and basic animal information at 2. Okay, and then last one, we saw a few in the previous response around there being more transparency. These are the items that seem to come up quite a bit whenever that's discussed. So same story again, you can select any number of these if you think that these should be, there should be additional transparency around any of these, making this information available to the rest of industry. BVs just means that at the moment it's only the gold trait BVs that would extend to all BVs. If there's something else that you think should be available to the rest of industry, just hit number 6, and that could be something we could pick up on in the question session, which we'll lead into after this. Just give that a couple more seconds. They're still coming, so I'll wait. Okay, all right, I'll close that off. Okay, cool. So for anyone that can't read that, we've got the largest at 47 was data quality, genetic trends at 43, and then tied even was genomic testing and breeding objectives at 38. And then BVs down at 30 and other at 7. So those 7 could be some topics for questions. Look, next steps. So we're basically working through at the moment, working out the correct way to package this up in terms of, it could be terms and conditions or policy or agreements, and then getting those circulated for review. So that's what we're doing. Very grateful for all the feedback today. Thanks very much for your time.